I never thought I'd have to do it again. I never thought I was going to ever talk about Dragon Ball GT again for the rest of my natural life. But, to be fair, through its faults, I have to give credit where credit is due. And I do think that Dragon Ball GT Transformations is a hidden gem for the Game Boy Advance. Now, I've talked previously before about the Game Boy Advance series of Dragon Ball games, more specifically Dragon Ball Z Legacy of Goku, and then Boo's Fury, the unofficial third game in the Legacy of Goku series. And that trilogy of video game was very, very solid. So even though, looking back, GT might not be that great, there was a lot of hype at the time for a Dragon Ball GT game, especially with following so many good Dragon Ball Z games for the Game Boy Advance. Now, Dragon Ball GT Transformations is a little bit different than the Legacy of Goku series. First thing is that it's not an RPG, explory, fighty kind of game. It's a side-scrolling beat-em-up. And I'm a really big fan of side-scrolling beat-em-ups. Now yes, there was Dragon Ball Advance, but that was more of like a side-scroller platformer, whereas Dragon Ball GT Transformations is strictly fighting. There's no platforming, no puzzles, it's just you walk to the right, and you kick the crap out of people. Now the roster of characters for Dragon Ball GT Transformation goes from most of the main characters from the first season of Dragon Ball GT, leading up to the final confrontation with Baby. Now, the roster of characters is a little bit on the slim side, but you do need to consider that there weren't really that many main characters that kept reappearing in Dragon Ball GT. The three main for the most of the series was Goku, Trunks, and Pan. And yes, all three of those characters are playable. And just to add, you can also play as Oob, Super Saiyan Kid Goku, Piccolo, Super Saiyan Vegeta, Super Saiyan 4 Goku, and Baby Vegeta. And I thought it was a nice touch that you were actually able to play as the main villain in the series, rather than just play as the heroes. Now, I did say that you can play as 3 different types of Goku. Yes, that is true. There's no transformations within this game. Even when you do like your super ultimate attack, it's just like a beam or a spirit bomb, or as in Baby's case, the Black Death Frieza ball. So there's no transformations, which is a little bit misleading because the title of the game is Dragon Ball GT Transformations. But the fact that you can stay as Super Saiyan 4 Goku or Baby Vegeta throughout the entirety of the game or the entirety of a playthrough or a level, whatever you're doing, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. Now, the characters, they do play a little bit differently. Of course, they have light attack, heavy attack, beams, and then their ultimate. Every character has their own specific ultimate, which is mostly just a giant beam that blasts across the screen. But the characters do differ slightly. Smaller characters like Kid Goku and Pan have smaller hitboxes, and Pan actually has a little robot dude, Gyro, with her. So she attacks, he attacks too, and you could do a lot of really cool combos with Pan. But that being said, the stats of the characters, they can differ greatly. The two best would be Super Saiyan 4 Goku and Baby Vegeta, having high stats in health, power, and stamina, whereas the other characters, especially Pan and Goku, they're a lot lower on the scale. So you're incentivized to play as the higher level characters once you do unlock them. And the only way to really unlock the characters is to play the game and build up enough points so you can purchase them in the in-game store. Now, one thing that I will note about the game is the story of it is the first season of Dragon Ball GT, leading up to that final fight with Baby. And you go through the galaxy going to all these different planets, like in the series, to collect the 7 Dragon Balls, which is not a bad concept. Now, to be fair, the game can get very monotonous, but each different world does have its own type of species, so it's not like you're fighting the same Tuffles over and over again, or you're fighting the same robots over and over again. There is a variety in the types of creatures that you fight, though the combat itself is the same with every single level. Boss fights have that typical beat 'em up thing where they're either like one character that you just beat up, or they're like they cover the entire screen and you just keep spamming blasts at them until they eventually die. It kind of breaks up the monotony, but still, it's a beat 'em up, so there's not much variety. One thing that I'll note that I do think works to the game's credit quite nicely is that it's multiplayer. So if you and a buddy have more than one copy of the game and a Game Boy Advance, or you have that connector cable to put them together, you can play with your friends. And what's cool is you don't have to select just one character. So your friend can pick 3 characters that would be on their team, and you can pick 3 characters that would be on your team. But you'll both have the one character each on your screens together, and then you can fight and do combos. Admittedly, it is pretty neat to have multiplayer in a Dragon Ball game, whereas all the other ones have primarily been single player. Not that there's anything wrong with a single player Dragon Ball game, but it's nice to see that kind of variety. Now, while it can be a pain nowadays for 2 people to have the same cartridge, the system, and the connector cable, since those can be hard to come by these days, it might not have aged the best, but in context of its original release, I'll have to give that a plus to it. So Dragon Ball GT Transformations is a pretty enjoyable game. It's got tight controls, although I will say that the combat can get very monotonous. The story mirrors the anime series pretty well. If you like it, great. If you don't like it, well, then you don't like it. But the originality of having a side-scrolling beat-em-up for a Dragon Ball game, and the fact that you can stay as Super Saiyan 4 Goku throughout the entirety, I think add to the game's credit. While it might not be as good as Boo's Fury, Legacy of Goku 2, or even Legacy of Goku 1, it's still a fun game, and if you are a Dragon Ball fan, if you can get past Dragon Ball GT, and you can forgive it for all its transgressions, I think you're going to have a fun time with this game. Alright everybody, thank you guys so much for watching this episode of Hidden Gems, and I will see you guys in the next one.